For the 2024 model year, the Mercedes-AMG GLA 35 gets a little bit of a refresh here. And in this video, I'll cover all the changes here for 2024, as well as talking about the exterior, the interior, talking about how it drives, the fuel economy you can expect, as well as pricing and how it compares to the competition, which I think is a very important component to keep this vehicle in context. But anyway, as far as the styling goes here, so for 2024, you have some new headlights with some new components in them, as well as some new taillights that also have some inner workings that are a little more intricate than before. Otherwise, it's mostly the same. This one has this $1,700 red option, which has a little bit of metallic flake in it, but seems like a pricey option for what is essentially just a basic metallic red. But otherwise, you know, you still have all the same usual upgrades here for an AMG visually, with the slatted grille and the more aggressive lower front bumper. You also have the 20-inch wheels here, which are optional. You can't go down to 19s, but these 20s are a really nice touch and still give you a decent amount of sidewall as well, which I appreciate. Coming down to the sides here, I always thought the GLA was an interesting shape, and even for this newer generation here, it still isn't quite a hatchback, but not quite an SUV or a crossover either. It's this kind of odd in-between thing. It has a very flat kind of back end there in the side silhouette, profile there, but it gives you some good interior space. It's very airy inside, as you'll see in a minute. But then going out to the back there, just still flat, but nice looking back end, especially with those new taillights and the dual exhaust tips there. And again, the AMG version definitely makes it look a little sportier. And if you'd like to jazz it up a little bit more, there's also a AMG exterior line package, which gives you a bigger front lip and a rear spoiler in the back that would make this even a little bit more aggressive looking. And so overall, it's not going to be for everyone looks wise, but it's functional at least, and so I'll give it that. The interior of the GLA 35 is going to be basically the same as it was for the pre-refresh, with a couple minor little changes. The biggest change is you get wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto now, which is very nice. And you also get this new AMG Performance steering wheel with these cool little displays on these little controller knobs here in the bottom. And I'll get more into the steering wheel in a minute. But the first thing I have to say about this interior, first off, this one, as tested, is about $64,500, which is already very expensive, and I'll get more into pricing later in this video. But for that price tag, you get squeaky door handles, you get window switches that actually, honestly, Honda makes nicer window switches these days than Mercedes. You do have, some nice metal here, for a lot of the switches, and the middle here is really nice with all the metal switch gear and the metal air vents, and it's all very impressive. The ambient lighting is impressive. There's those types of things, but, there's a lot of obvious corner cutting as well, just with, these cheap materials, and just, again, the fact that everything already squeaks and rattles. This vehicle has less than 5,000 miles on it. We're already getting squeaks and rattles that are only going to get worse with age. So, it gives you an early preview of what you can expect with the ownership of one of these things. You also have a lot of piano black plastic, and so, it's even on the steering wheel for all the buttons you're always pressing all the time. So, there's a lot of that. If you're not crazy about that, just be warned about that. Also, moving on to the seats here in the GLA 35 here. These aren't even the most aggressive seats. These are just the regular seats. They have the Dynamica, which also isn't perforated, so it gets nice and hot in the summer here, and your back does not breathe. It's really sweaty. Perforated seats are really a must these days, in my opinion. So I don't love that. They're also only heated seats. There's no cooling function because, again, they're not perforated. So not comfortable seats in that regard. And then also, these seats are stiff. These are some of the stiffest seats that I've reviewed in a car in probably at least a few years. Again, we're talking about a performance hot hatch, I suppose you can classify this as. So maybe you want to give it a pass, but the Golf R doesn't make you have uncomfortable seats. The GR Corolla doesn't make you have uncomfortable seats. Civic Type R has amazingly comfortable seats. Acura Integra Type S, even if we're going to compare it to that stuff, or if we compare it to the other competitors, the German competitors, Audi RS3 has much more comfortable seats. Just no excuse to not have comfort, especially in a Mercedes here. So really don't like these seats at all. The steering wheel also, while it looks cool, and I do like the little displays, that is a very cool touch, and you have some metal here on it. But again, having all this piano black plastic isn't great. And the steering wheel itself, the 9-3 grip is a little thick. This will come down to your hand size, I suppose, but most vehicles don't have overly thick wheels, in my opinion. But I can't get a great grip on this wheel. It's okay, but just a little thicker than I think it needs to be totally honest. The paddle shifters, though, are very nice looking and nice feeling with these big chunks of metal here on the back of the wheel. And this one's Dynamica as well, which is an option, thankfully. You don't have to get that, but just be warned, if you get any kind of this Dynamica ceramic Alcantara stuff, it all looks crappy after, you know, just a year or two, honestly, because of your hand oils and everything. Just doesn't wear very well. I'd go for a regular leather wheel every time, but some people really like the Alcantara, so I'll leave you to decide on that one. Anyway, though, moving on to the screens here. So this one has the double 10.3-inch screens as standard, and they're nice. You have some nice adjustability there for the style of gauges there in the middle, and pretty cool. You know, I mean, it used to be that other Mercedes would allow you to customize the pods on the left and the right. It doesn't appear like there's any of that customization anymore. It's just the different appearances and then whatever's in the middle. So a little more simple, but, you know, still, again, lots of different themes to choose from. So I gotta, you know, give them kudos for that at least. And then coming over to the middle here, it's an okay screen, but, you know, these days, you know, a lot of other screens have gotten a lot bigger. So compared to a lot of competitors, even like the BMWs and things like that have bigger screens these days, this might start to look a little small. It's still totally sufficient. And all the Mercedes menus have gotten pretty good over the past few years here with, you know, tuning radio stations, navigation, all that stuff. It's pretty easy to work. I'm thankful that it's just a simple touchscreen now, no more controllers or anything like that. But, you know, it's a good system. Again, the CarPlay is going to be the main thing you're going to use most of the time, and it's great that it has that. It's also hooked up to this Burmester stereo here, which sounds fantastic and is a really well done stereo, so great there. And then just, again, your basic row of climate controls. Cargo space is also pretty good as far as, you know, storage up front here. You know, you have nice large pockets in the doors here. In the middle, you have a wireless charging pad, your 2 cup holders, another little bonus space that's not quite big enough for a phone, but, you know, nice to have, I guess, nonetheless. One other thing I have to add, though, is in this area, you have more of this, like, metal trim, which is, you know, certainly classy, but it's hard. And whenever your knee is, you know, splayed out, when you got cruise control on, you're just cruising on the highway, having your knee resting on nice hard metal doesn't feel great. You know, most luxury vehicles these days, even some non-luxury stuff, has padding down here. I much prefer that. Also, even on the door here, this speaker grill, the way it kicks up, it's just at the right angle and the right spot to just be like digging into my calf whenever my legs, again, are splayed out just cruising, you know, with cruise control on or something. But you know, again, it's a sporty vehicle, so I will give them a pass, I suppose. But, you know, again, I think that some of the other sporty vehicles this competes against do the comfort thing better. Also, you have a center armrest, which is pretty good, although this seam down the middle is also kind of hard. So it's actually not super comfortable to rest your elbow on. But anyway, you open that up, and you have a deep cubby in there. It actually goes even further than what you can see here on camera. And there's also 2 USB-C jacks in there. Really great you have that. There's also another one up here you can see along with a power outlet. And, you know, so it's a very mixed bag. Some stuff is really bad in my opinion. Other stuff is really good, like top notch for the segment. So it's a very interesting case here with the GLA. So you make of it what you will. But moving on to the back seat, you know, it's an okay back seat. It's pretty nice and airy, especially this one with this double moonroof. I mean, you got lots of headroom, a good amount of legroom as well. And you do have the air vents there and 2 more USB-C jacks. There's also pockets in those doors, but there's no fold down center armrest, which, I mean, you know, even like base compact sedans have a fold down center armrest. So there aren't any proper cup holders in the GLA. I'm not sure why. So another thing to keep in mind here, just odd quirks about this car that's just like, who gave 2 thumbs up in the boardroom and was like, yep, that's the way it should be. Great job, everyone. Like, I don't get it. But anyway, moving on to the cargo space here in the GLA, it's a good amount of space. It's your average kind of hatchback kind of space. Nothing that's going to blow you away. It's not as big as an actual compact SUV or anything. This is really a subcompact class vehicle still. But the nice thing is there is a lower load floor you can go down to there. If you don't need to have a flat load floor, you can have that on that lower space and give you a little bit of extra room there. But there's really no other, you know, storage space under the floor there, as you can see. And so overall, you know, this interior, I think it's great for tall people. I mean, I have enormous amounts of headroom thanks to this, you know, kind of odd shape, like I mentioned earlier. But outside of that, there's really no redeeming qualities. Everything else this competes with is more comfortable, even the cheaper stuff, especially for this price tag. But let's start up and go for a drive. The GLA 35 here does have the cool AMG version of the Mercedes key, with this being like a satin black metal instead of the usual silvery bright work you usually have. But so I really like this key. It's nice and thin, and honestly, really well done. So gotta give credit where credit's due. Great key for the AMG. But of course, keyless access, keyless entry, push button start finally, you know, and all of these. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right out. All right, so setting off here in the GLA 35. Unfortunately, I have a lot of complaints just to start off with as well, because it's a lot of stuff that is readily apparent the second you start off in this vehicle that you're going to notice immediately on a test drive, I think. So the first thing that I'm noticing is the throttle response. It has a good delay. It's sometimes like a 1, 2, 3 beat, and I will do a full stop here and actually demonstrate here. So if I go 1, 2, 3, there we go. Like every time it's that slow. And I guess you can do some of the blame on the dual clutch transmission. It's an 8-speed dual clutch still, but this is the year 2024. Everyone else has got DCTs figured out, and why Mercedes? You can still feel the engagement. It's still rough sometimes, and it also, you might be able to hear there's actually like a little bit of gear whine still, and I don't know what that's about. I mean, I would hope that would be unique to this vehicle. The only other thing I can think of is maybe it's part of this 48-volt system, which was one of the major new additions here for 2024, is this 48-volt mild hybrid system that essentially is just giving you an extended stop-start system, as well as giving you 13 extra horsepower, supposedly, of electric boost in little situations. And because of that system, there's now like a regen drag, and you can see in the gauge cluster, it shows you when it's charging, what is a tiny, tiny battery, because it doesn't actually have any real hybrid functionality. There is no accelerating whatsoever under electric power, but like I just felt a little thump there from the transmission right there. But so the regen is also kind of annoying because it gives you like a manual transmission like drag whenever you let off the gas. So this vehicle doesn't coast. It was always slowing down slightly. I mean, it's not like hard regen like in an EV or anything, but it's always got a little bit of drag there. And if you're somebody who likes coasting, it's kind of annoying. And there is also no dedicated manual mode, so even if you want to pretend like this is a manual transmission vehicle and paddle shift everywhere you go, like it automatically goes into an auto mode once again after you're done playing with the paddles. I haven't found any button anywhere around here or setting to force it to stay in the manual mode, so I don't think that's an option, unfortunately, anymore. They used to have a nice button, and there's even a blank button here in the middle next to the volume knob. They could have put it there, but instead, no manual mode that I can see either. Another thing, and I'll talk about this more as we continue to drive, but the ride is also really stiff here in these, and you have adaptive dampers here. So you'd think there'd be some bandwidth there to make it soft and hard, but no, it's just like varying degrees of stiffness, and none of them are super comfortable, to be totally honest. And again, a Golf R is more comfortable with its adaptive dampers, even in their stiffest setting and stuff. It's just like stiffness for, I guess, the sake of theater, more so than it is for any kind of actual improvements here. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it up into the Sport Plus mode, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it accelerates. Here we go. Instant response there, so that's great. Sounds really good. Get a little bit of wastegate flutter there, and I mean, it sounds like a rally car or something. Honestly, it sounds really cool, and I think there is some speaker help going on there, but you do get some actual exhaust note that sounds really good. It sounds like an angry, bee or something. It sounds really, really good. So this is a really, impressive performer. 302 horsepower here, 295 pound-feet of torque. Mercedes claims a 5.1 second 0 to 60. I'm going to do a launch control here a little bit later. I think maybe you could get a little bit better than that, to be totally honest. But that's the claim, and it's a good amount of power, and it puts it all through again. This 8-speed dual clutch to the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system that is standard. And it all, works together fairly well whenever you are in full attack mode. I think, the AMG-ification of this vehicle really had focused on, Sport Plus mode, and you're driving really aggressively, and they kind of forgot about, the daily driving kind of function where, this vehicle is, not a great daily driver, to be totally honest, with the stiff ride, the rough transmission, the gear whine, all that kind of stuff. And now we're on this little bit of a rougher road here that I always go on that you can hear there's also a good amount of road noise, honestly. For a luxury vehicle like this, at least a Mercedes branded vehicle, it's just too loud in here, even for an entry-level Mercedes. Just not very good from a refinement standpoint. But anyway, coming up some corners here that I always take. Let's see how the GLA 35 handles. So we have 255 wide tires. The steering is really stiff and like overly heavy in my opinion, so it almost feels like it's fighting you diving into a corner, especially once you are down to almost like the 10 o'clock position. Going from like 10 to 9 o'clock position on the wheel here is where it really, like, it fights you, but then it slingshots you out of the corner. And I think a little bit of it is that electric assistance that helps us to feel extra punchy coming out of corners, but also just, it does stay in the right gear here in the Sport Plus mode and really does feel dynamic. So it's very good handling. It also weighs under 3,900 pounds, so that's good. But again, this heavy steering just makes it feel like it's heavier and just like it doesn't want to do what you want it to do. And again, you get the stiffer dampers in that mode. So, I actually don't love that. What I've been doing this whole week is going into the intelligent, or the individual mode here. In the individual mode, I have it set up for a dynamic engine, but the comfort suspension, that is a lot better. The ride is still just too firm in comfort mode, but, at least with this, the steering isn't fighting me as much and actually does feel more eager. And this is what I really love, because then, whenever it's willing to change direction a little more with a lighter steering, then it does come alive a little more. And I gotta say, it's very flat. And riding the wave of that boost is very satisfying. And whenever you are, full-blown attack on a back road in this thing, it feels great. So it, again, they really focused on the performance side of it, and that's great, but that's only half the experience. And most people aren't flying around on their daily drive all the time on a back road either. So if you do a ton of this stuff, where you're willing to make the sacrifice that other performance hot hatches don't make you make, then, have at it. But, even though it drives great, I just don't think that the trade-offs are worth it. All right, but let's quickly try a launch control here. Didn't say anything about launch control being on, but it launched pretty good there. But again, it still kind of was holding back boost. Didn't rip my head off the way I was hoping to. Maybe I didn't do it correctly, but I had my left foot planted and right foot planted. That's usually the way to do it in these Mercedes. But anyway, let's try out the manual shifting here, even though, again, the car usually doesn't like it when you do the manual shifting, because it just wants to always go back to the auto mode pretty quickly. But I'll go down here. And here we go. So you get, on the manual shifts, it's great because you do get a little bit of a burp on the upshift there, and it does hold the gear nicely, and that's where this is the most fun, is whenever you are taking control of these, because the whole point of a dual clutch is fast manual shifts. That's one of the big perks of these, and so it's great that you have that. It's just, again, I wish it would stay in that mode, because unfortunately it just really doesn't. But there's no complaints on the shift speeds. It's all nice and quick. A little bit of crackle on the down part there. Another acceleration, manually shifting. Yeah, it sounds great. It's fantastic. And whenever you are just tearing it up here, it is, like I said, it's fantastic. But just wish that it was a little more comfortable, because, man, you feel every bump, you feel every groove, every little minor thing the wheels are going through, which is surprising, because you have these nice tall sidewalls. You would think that it would soak up more of that, but they just tune these dampers to just be crazy aggressive. Now, as far as the other important thing here, it already just went back into the auto mode, so it gave me, what was that, 15-20 seconds of manual shifting, and with me just leaving it in the gear before, it's like, all right, I'm taking over now. Even though I wasn't doing anything wrong, it just decided to upshift to fifth and start hypermiling, even in Sport Plus mode here a little bit. Anyway, so as far as the brakes go here in this vehicle, it's 4-piston calipers in the front there. And I really 14.3-inch rotors that are drilled in the front, 13-inch rotors in the rear. Good amount of brakes. That's one thing I don't have any complaints on. Brakes feel nice and natural. A little bit of wiggle room there before they start clamping down hard. So a little more forgiving than like BMW brakes usually are, where those really bite right towards the top of the pedal. And if you're not careful with those, you'll knock your teeth out on the steering wheel. But with this, it's it's definitely a little bit easier to manage and easier to be smooth with, and so that's great. But back in the Sport Plus mode here, again, diving, I gotta wrestle with this wheel to get this thing. I'm going back to the individual mode. The handling is still, it's fantastic. It really is. Do some more corners here just for fun, because again, this is the real party trick of this vehicle. And it really is impressive too, how you can really feel the front pulling you through and the back end working with you. It all works in concert perfectly to just allow you to blast out of corners. You can start getting on the throttle nice and early, and you can just feel all the technology just kind of working it all out perfectly and just pulling you through, and feels really, really good on a back road. Another thing that you notice whenever you're stopping and starting in, you know, city traffic, stop signs, red lights, things like that, is that for some reason, basically every single time you come to a stop, it pops out the rear camera, even though it's not displaying any image on the screen. It has that rear camera always ready. I don't know if that's because it's part of like the automated parking system this has or what, but I always am hearing in the hatch this little, it's not quiet, this, you know, motor going, you know, every time you have it stop and start, and it's just this strange thing. For a while I thought there was like something loose in the hatch or something, and then I was like, oh wait, that's the camera coming on and on, because it's, you know, this hidden little thing, which is cool, but it just means that it's got to pop open a million times. That is guaranteed, I'm sure, to break, you know, eventually, because every time you stop and start having your camera pop out, like, good luck with that one. But anyway, so just another little minor thing. And now out on the highway in the GLA 35. It's pretty noisy, pretty bumpy, to be completely honest. Also, another little thing is that I noticed a little bit of whistling that was happening. To me, it sounded like it was around the door mirrors whenever I was cruising on the highway yesterday in this. And so, just not super refined there. And you also hear some of the gear whine once again, which, by the way, even the racier stuff, like GR Corolla Type R, none of those have gear whine. It's so unrefined here for 2024 to be hearing gear whine, which is why I'm hoping it's just this car and not something as a trait of the GLA 35s. It's also worth noting, like, I reviewed a CLA 35 that was a couple years old just last year, and honestly that felt a lot better than this does. So I think it's some of these changes, you know, for the 48 volt thing for 2024 here, or maybe that's really, you know, throwing off some of the tuning and stuff. One thing I do have to give Mercedes credit for, though, is that even in comfort mode here, it isn't so resistant to giving you downshifts like the Golf R is. The Golf R with the most recent DCT tuning that those have, I mean, that thing, unless you're in sport mode or you're manually shifting everywhere yourself, I mean, it just does not want to give you a downshift. It is like just programmed to hypermile. So I'm glad that this isn't like that. So again, there are some good redeeming qualities here for sure. It's just littered with a bunch of other annoying stuff along with it that just unfortunately hampers the experience. Basically, this whole thing needs polished from top to bottom. But I mean, otherwise, I mean, like the adaptive cruise system works fine. I turned off the lane keep assist system because it's been pretty annoying whenever I've had it on for the first day or so there. But you know, it does do that. It's the Distronic system is available in these. But unfortunately, outside of like automatic emergency braking, most of the other safety tech is still an option, even though a base Toyota Corolla will give you adaptive cruise control now. You got to pay, you know, a big upcharge here still to get it in the Mercedes, which is just insane, but it is what it is. Just, again, it drives the price of all of these up way higher, but it also doesn't give you a low starting price. The fact that you don't have all that stuff, it's still, you know, at a high starting price, and then in this one, as tested, is, you know, by far the most expensive in its segment that it competes in. Fuel economy for these is rated at 22 mpg in the city, 28 on the highway, and 24 combined. And in my driving, which I'd say was more city than highway, was close to a 50-50 split, but I think I still did more city driving than highway, but I'm getting 24 mpg exactly over 109 miles of driving here. So I'm hitting that combined figure, which usually I get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in most of my driving, in most of my press vehicles that I have. So honestly, I'm impressed with the fuel economy. I think it's kind of overperforming my expectations and also could potentially overperform those EPA ratings. And so at least it's a very, you know, fuel efficient motor, even if it's you know, not the smoothest as far as the transmission and stuff. But lastly, let's talk about pricing and how it compares to the competition. So these start right around $58,000, which is already towards the upper end. And then this one, which isn't even a top trim, by the way, you can get like a heads-up display that this one doesn't have. There's a few other things, but this one, a mid-grade trim that, you know, has a few options on it. This one, as tested, is $64,650, and I mean, you know, 65 grand essentially for this is just no bueno. It's just not good. I mean, if you really want to spend, you know, mid-60s for something, there are so many more exciting options. You can get an Audi RS3, a brand new RS3 that's comparably equipped to this for around $65,000 to $68,000, which has 100 more horsepower, a way more dynamic vehicle. Really, the only perk of this is, you know, the hatch versatility and a little bit more space on the inside here. But, you know, it's like, that's the level of performance we're talking. When you're in that kind of price range, you're talking 400 horsepower, you're talking, you know, amazing handling. The RS3 was one of my favorite cars I've driven, you know, at that price point, and, you know, in general, it's just a hilarious fun to drive that thing. This is nowhere near that level, and it's the same money basically. But even, when you compare it to the other competitors, you can get a BMW X1 or X2 M35i version of those. Those are like 59 grand with, again, all the same stuff this has, maybe even a little bit more than what this has. Again, perforated seats and, the option for cooling and all that kind of stuff. It has all that stuff at a 5 grand discount, 6 grand almost discount. So you can even get like an Audi SQ5 for similar money to this, which is insane. But then, even when you go to like Mini just has the brand new Countryman John Cooper Works, which actually does like 10 more horsepower than this. Probably won't handle as well as this. Again, this is probably going to be the top as far as handling in its competitive set. Again, if you don't consider the RS3 or the non-luxury brand hot hatchbacks. But the Mini, I haven't driven it yet. It's a brand new 2025 model, but on paper it does similar specs, and those are like $52,000. Way cheaper. We're talking 12, 13 grand less than this for same power, same kind of space, a premium brand. Minis, put on by BMW, same company. So, there's a deal there to be had potentially. There's just so many other options. There's no world where this makes any sense from a pricing standpoint. Now, if you're shopping one of these used, since Mercedes fall like rocks with the depreciation, if you can get one of these used, in a couple of years, or you're looking at a pre-2024 of this generation, there could be a deal there, and I think maybe these could be appealing on the used market, but brand new, absolutely not appealing in my opinion. There's a little bit of greatness hidden amongst a pile of annoyances and unimpressive stuff, unfortunately. It's a shame. I even had an Acura TLX Type S this week, the same week that I had this vehicle, and I didn't even want to drive this because I was just like, the TLX is faster, it's more comfortable, it has every luxury you can imagine, it looks cooler, I'd say, as well. And even that's $59,000 for a bona fide sports sedan that has 60 more horsepower, way more luxury. It just, the second that you even cross shop this, it just goes out the window with any kind of appeal. And again, even in a vacuum, I can't enjoy this because of all the complaints I mentioned. So this is one of my reviews where I'm just letting it have it. But honestly, I can't find an angle for this vehicle. I can't find a way to justify it at this price point or at any price point. Just, there's so many good vehicles at this level these days that there's no room for mediocrity, and I'd call this mediocre at best. So anyway, that is my my verdict on the Mercedes-AMG GLA 35. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks for Mercedes for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.